As we, of course, look to the important and highly anticipated phone call between President Xi and President Trump. Of course, there's expectations that the technology is going to be dominating that conversation. What are you looking out for today?
Yeah, so many things in play. The headlines are coming at us very fast from different directions, including, out of the UK, US summit on tech. But the reality is that obviously NVIDIA, moving into Intel, which is a US backed company or US owned company now. In a weird sense, the US is becoming more like China in the sense that there is more government intervention directly, explicitly in this. And so both sides are really focusing in now on what really matters. We saw the Chinese side dropping the investigation into Google over antitrust, which allows them to really focus in on NVIDIA. And so I think, the next year is the year of the horse, but there's a lot of horse trading going on already now ahead of this call. And we're seeing a real sharpening of the negotiations ahead of a likely deal over TikTok in the next few hours.
In terms of progress, are you optimistic? So we should get details on TikTok. What else could these two presidents be discussing today?
Well, firstly, on TikTok, one thing that's interesting, I was just reading Kevin Chu, who I really rank as an analyst. He talks of a template over TikTok that, if you think about in the past, we were really focused on either banning a technology or forcing its sale, right? This is where we were at this impasse. But now when we're getting into things like licensing, that obviously under the previous administration, there was almost a religious fervor against, Chinese, core tech. We've seen some of that continuing under Trump, but we've also seen a tendency to just do a deal, and particularly with the U.S. government becoming a shareholder in some of these companies, we're seeing this idea that it's not all about just blocking the technologies, it's getting on board. So that then answers other questions that can then move discussions on a wide range of topics. If the TikTok core keystone is solved, then we can start to see a lot more progress in the other areas.
With the U.S. Taking stakes in companies and now NVIDIA coming to the rescue of that of Intel, we're also looking at the technology in China and the self-reliance. How are they doing in this regard?
Yes, well, obviously, as you just reported, there's a lot of interest in doubling down on Chinese capabilities in this area, including this new, ban on Chinese buyers of NVIDIA's, for China technology, which, of course, infamously was described as, trying to create a dependency, which is never a good thing to talk about if you know anything about Chinese history, on a foreign product. That obviously didn't go down well with Beijing. And so that's, I think, where we're seeing focusing in on now is Beijing trying to boost local capabilities to avoid the position of dependency. And as you said, there's some hype in that. It's, we're going day to day on headlines when, of course, there's many months and years ahead of hard work to achieve some of these breakthroughs. But, obviously, the U.S. and China are now engaged in a much more equal, in some areas, competition, given their respective leverage points. So I think actually there is optimism now for the, the domestic stocks. As we heard, there's always going to be some volatility, and the discount value still, discount on Chinese stocks is still pretty high. But I think we're seeing a sense of pragmatism kicking in between the two sides, which can flow from the TikTok deal. So it's a pretty complicated situation.
And one point is the White House, of course, as they've allowed NVIDIA to ship their chips to China, they're going to be taking a 15% cut in this. Maybe that has something to do with why China doesn't want the U.S. to get a boost every time it continues to import some of these NVIDIA chips. Moving on, I want to ask about the trade talks or the potential summit that we could see between President Trump and Xi. There has been a formal invitation that has been sent from Beijing to President Trump. How confident are you that the two leaders could have a summit or even official state visit to Beijing?
I think the timing is tight, and obviously some people are already thinking about a fallback on the sidelines of APEC in South Korea later on in November. So I don't know. Again, things are moving so fast on both sides. I think the win seemed to be more of a priority for the U.S. side in having this meeting. Obviously, China's recent Tianjin summit and the Shanghai Cooperation, plus Belt and Road, plus the famous parade here in Beijing, We've seen China sort of pursuing an independent path increasingly. Whereas the U.S., Trump has famously been, obviously waiting for the call or waiting for this one-on-one to happen. So it does seem that, as we saw with when President Putin went to Alaska, that sometimes you can, gain from simply having a meeting for optics without perhaps trading too much. So my sense is that still that China's has the upper hand here. But at the same time, it is helpful for both sides. Both sides are facing slightly weakening economy. I mean, China's facing obviously the continued property downturn, gloom post zero COVID, et cetera. U.S., we've seen the softening recently of numbers on the jobs market. So I think it's not helpful to both sides to be in an impasse. But I would sense that it's still a bit of a stretch to get this done. But who knows? I mean, again, the call today may make things happen much quicker than we expect.
You brought up the optics and very strong visuals that came through from the military parade, and you're up in Beijing, and I'm sure you caught a little bit of a glimpse of that, maybe some of the flyovers. I want to get your sense on where China stands. You say that they do come in from a position of strength. The fact that President Xi had on the left and right Vladimir Putin and Kim Jong-un, how is that going to play into any of the dynamics when President Xi and Trump have their call or their meeting?
Yeah, well, I actually just flew in yesterday. I wanted to avoid all of that stuff, but it is interesting to think that that message was put out there about China's increasing autonomous approach to international relations, or and increasingly doubling down on its relations with the global South. But on the other hand, the large trading relationship is the U.S.-China side. So I would sense that China has some incentive to dilute to somewhat the images that we saw that you're now showing of the parade, of the very much some of the frankly cliches way that we often would look at China in the past. Because it's been very overbearing in terms of international media. So my sense is that I think there is going to be progress made. Whether that means a summit immediately or not, I think you're going to be seeing, and as we just saw with this dropping of the antitrust investigation into Google, there are going to be there's going to be flexibility on the Chinese side to indicate that it is looking for a deal here.
Trump has a slogan, "Make America Great Again," and some are saying that it has also gone with all his policies to make China great again, to make Hong Kong great again. Would you agree with that?
Look, I mean, everybody's trying to make themselves great again. There's trade-offs in this. So what is confusing and interesting is the fact that if the U.S. is becoming a shareholder in some of these companies, and then if China is paying effectively, rewarding or penalizing companies in which the U.S. is a shareholder, that's a whole new dynamic. This goes from 4D chess to 5, if that's even possible. But no, there's a lot of optics, a lot of posturing going on right now. But I think we are going to see this come to a head. With deals on TikTok and trade, and don't forget that we've had 4 rounds now in Europe of trade negotiations moving up to this point. And thinking longer term, it's really the optics of for the U.S. The midterms in just over a year from now. But more interesting is the economy. I mean, can we keep this very robust in many ways U.S. economy ticking over without more concerns on the job market? We saw recently the rate cut. So there is actually a sense of, U.S. cannot overplay its hand here. And obviously, on the one hand, tariffs are bringing in money to the United States. That's clear, frankly, at the expense of U.S. consumers. But if this leads to a prolonged downturn, this is not good for either side. So again, it's mano a mano, I guess, today on the phone call.